Hey guys, this is the Crystal Lite. This is a take off of Kelly Gallup's Laser Legal, which is by far one of my favorite flies, but I wanted to tie it quicker and to give myself the ability to tie it in some awesome color combinations. This happens to be my olive, right, with pearl, which I'm going to tie with you guys today, but I want to show you this is a gray version. I've got my black version, white, and then one of my other favorites, which is tan. And as you can see, the fish just absolutely love this. This happens to be a fish that I caught. I was fishing the Crystal Lite and I was zigzagging. If you're not familiar with what the heck that is, you can check it out on one of my other videos. But the fly itself moves like crazy in the water. It articulates like mad. And when you look at the materials that you use to tie it, they're extremely straightforward and extremely easy. I've got Marabou for the tail, for the wing, both on the back and the front hook. As far as body materials, I use Ice Dub and UV Pearl, both on the back and the front. I use a little hotspot with UV Pink. And then as far as additional body materials, I'm using a UV Polar Chenille, basically to wrap both the back and the front hook. I've got a Daiichi 2460 size number 6 on the back, B10S size number 8 with a brass bead 3/16, which you could also change out for a tungsten if you wanted it to ride deeper. Awesome fly, one of my favorites. So without further ado, let's get tying. All right, so let's get tying. We're gonna start with the Daiichi 2460, size number 6. And I'm just going to lay down a base layer of thread. And I'm actually going to bring my thread back up. I'm gonna leave myself about an eye's length up front. Okay, next I've got a little Marabou. This happens to be from Fish Hunter. This is Sculpin Olive and it's UV, and I'm going to be using some feathers for the tail and for the body that are incredibly wispy, right? A lot of movement to them, and I'm going to grab off about an inch or so of materials right off the side of the feather and going to align the tips themselves. And I want the length of the tail to be a little bit longer than the length of the hook itself, maybe 1/8 of an inch more. Bring those materials back, get them locked into position, and I'm going to start at the head and I'm going to walk back. And I found this is a really nice way to create some great taper. So I clip that off. I'm going to come back up front, same exact location. Grab my feathers. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull off I'm just getting rid of the junk there, about 1 inch worth of materials. Same thing. I'm going to measure. I'd like that length to be a little bit longer, the same length that I have off the back. Just going to pinch the materials, wrap once, twice, 3 times. Just make sure the material is on top, and I can do that by actually holding up in an extreme angle as I walk back. Keeps everything right on top of the hook. And as far as a length and a size of the tail, that looks absolutely perfect, right where I want it to be. So the next material that I'm going to use is going to be UV Polar Chenille. This is in silver. So I've just cut off a piece of the silver itself, and I'm going to lay the material down. I'm going to use the length out the back actually to create the flash, right? When I turn it sideways, it'll have the flash. And I'm also going to come back because I'm going to tie in a little bit of UV, and this happens to be Pearl Ice Dub. And I'm going to use this to create the body color. Now I'm going to rip this material in half because I'm going to come back with my Velcro in a couple minutes, and I'm going to tease it out, and I want it to basically blend out through the entire fly. And if you don't rip it in half, you don't get as much actually physically breaking through. So I've got that UV ice dub, looks good. Just going to start at the back and I'm going to wrap forward. Again, I'm not looking for tight loops, I'm just looking for that material to get into position. I'm gonna leave myself some length up front. I've got about an eye length up front. I've got a pesky material, just gonna cut it off. Okay, so back to my chenille here. And I'm just going to start wrapping forward. Doesn't matter if I get any of those materials down, I'm gonna come back with my Velcro to pull everything out. And I'm leaving about an 1/8 of an inch gap as I walk forward. You can see I pull the materials back. I'm putting some tension on that cord. And that looks great. Just gonna come behind once, come behind twice, pull everything back, lock everything down, and come back and clip. Okay, I am going to create a little bit of a taper here. And the way that I do it, first I'm gonna change the way that I'm holding my scissors. So I'm gonna put my thumb and my finger in like that. I'm going to create basically a mohawk with the materials, pulling everything upright except for those that I want as the flash coming out the back. And I'm going to start at an angle or a height of about 1/2 inch, and I'm going to go back to a 1/4 inch. So here we go, 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch. And if there's any random materials that you see laying around or off the side, you can just give them a trim too. Okay, next, back to my Fish Hunter Marabou, and I'm going to end up using both sides this time. So what I'm going to do, just to make life easy, I'm going to clip the center stem out, and now I'm going to pull those materials back, and this is what I'm going to use to create my wing. Now, as far as the length, I just wanted to go maybe of a 1/4 inch back on the other tail itself. So that looks good. I'm going to come up once, twice. Going to make sure that everything is still on top of the hook. Preen the materials back, come in front, basically locking everything into position. And now I'm just going to twist my Marabou into a little rope, come behind, clip, which gets me down nice and tight, come in right behind the eye, and just laying those materials down. And this does not have to be fancy in the least. Next, I've got a Copics marker here. This is just olive. I'm gonna come through, hit the thread. The great thing about using white is you can make it any color that you want. I'm gonna color my thread here. And gonna grab my Zap-A-Gap medium, hit about 1/2 inch of it with that Zap-A-Gap. You can see it bead right up on there, looks great. And now I'm just going to lock everything into position, wrapping forward, pulling tight, and just hit it with the razor. Okay, that's not going anywhere. Next, I've got Orvis Super Strong. This is mono. It's in 20 pound, and I'm going to put on some beads on it. These are beads that I've gotten from Michael's craft store. They're 8/0 glass beads. You can get them dirt cheap in any color that you want. It's great. And I'm just going to feed the mono up. And that is it. Okay, so for the front hook, I'm going to use a B10S size number 8. And you can see I've got a bead on here. It's a brass bead, it's 3/16. And you can see that it's a flat black versus kind of that shiny glossy black. That just so in my fly box I can quickly differentiate between what's a brass bead and what's a tungsten. Okay, so I've got the back part of my fly, rear section, and all I'm gonna do is bring it to the side, and I figured out a new way to actually keep my beads from sliding back. And all I do is I put a single twist in the mono before actually putting it and tying it down onto the hook. And the cool thing is it keeps the beads from going directly back. As you can see, you can't push them back on there, which is great from an articulation perspective. Okay, as far as the distance, I want to make sure there's at least 3/4 of an inch here of a gap between the back of the hook and the front of the hook there. Now I'm just going to leverage that Vivus 100 gel spun. You can really put some awesome pressure on the mono. That is great. I'm going to clip it off now that I've put it back on top of itself, and I'm just going to use a little bit of super glue. This happens to be Zap-A-Gap, and it's thin. Always be careful with this stuff. It tends to go out quickly and can go anywhere and everywhere. So I survived that. And just going to do a quick wrap and around. And I'm going to now lock my material from that rear hook back into place. Okay, stopping right on the back here, I'm back to my UV ice dub in pearl. And I'm just going to keep it. I'm not going to rip it into any half because I'm going to create a ball. And the reason why I do this is to help ensure that the articulation doesn't get tangled with materials. That's one of the things that I figured out over the years. Just want to keep those materials from sitting back on that loop. It just reduces the total amount of wiggle that you have in your fly. So by doing this, it increases it. Okay, next thing I'm going to do, I'm using my Polar Chenille, again, UV Polar Chenille in silver. And I've got the section that I used last time. Just going to lay it directly on top of the hook. I'm going to come right back to that ball and even push against it a little bit. And I'm going to use my UV ice dub again. And this time I'm going to grab a pinch, it's about a 1/4 inch or so, ripping it in half because I do want this material now to kind of explode when I use that Velcro to pull against it. And I'm going to walk this up, walk it up the hook. I'm not looking for it to be super tight. You notice I'm leaving some gaps. And next, I'm going to put on a little ice dub in UV pink right at the front. And I'm going to do the same thing, grabbing about a 1/4 inch material, rip it in half. And I like to put this little hint of color up front because if you look at minnows on the front of their heads, they've got a little bit of that blue, they've got a little bit of that pink. Sometimes their gills flare out. So that looks nice. All right. Now, time just to wrap that UV Polar Chenille up, and I'm taking my time. I don't care if it splays out, I don't care what direction it goes, just I'm doing my best not to let those materials get tied down. And now I'm going to come right up behind that bead and do 1, 2 wraps. Looks good. Notice I pulled down, putting a little tension on, grabbing my Vivus 100, going once behind, twice behind, and now right behind that bead 2 times. Looks great. Trimming off the extra, and now we're going to do a haircut on this as well. You remember on the back we started at 1/2 inch and went to 1/4. This time I'm going to go about 3/4 down to 1/2. And again, I'm holding my scissors a little different, right? You can see there I've got the fibers captured, so 3/4 to 1/2. So what I've done, right, I've created taper, which looks really cool. And if you see any extra fibers going, you can trim them now. Okay, next material I'm going to use is the Fish Hunter, back to that Sculpin olive. And I've got a feather here where you can see the materials are nice and wispy. And I'm going to pull off about 1 inch worth of material. I can see how much I have on the rear section, and I just want to make sure that I have more. As far as the distance, I'm going to want the materials, the tips, to actually go about 1/4 inch back. So I'm going to preen everything back, take a quick look, do a quick measurement, and now I'm going to do 2 loose wraps. There's 1, there's 2. Just make sure that it's on top of the hook. Looks good. Gonna cinch, and now come in front once, twice. All right, now I'm gonna do a trim just by doing either a twist, or in this case, I'm just gonna put my scissors down. I think I want just a little bit more, so I'm gonna grab about 1/2 inch, peel it back. Same exact thing. I'm going to align the tips, which looks good. Come in front once, twice. Make sure those materials are where you want them. Line them up top. Then come in front once, twice. And now I'm just going to clip these materials off. So that looks great. I'm just going to do a wrap or 2, and I'm going to grab my UV pink ice dub once again. I'm going to leave the fibers long. You can see I grabbed about 1/4 inch of materials. Just going to wrap it, pull the materials back. Best to keep everything out. And I just wanted 1 wrap. Just going to pull the other ice stub off. Looks nice. Come behind it, lock it into position. And the last thing I'm going to do here is just grab a little of the Zap-A-Gap. This is a medium. Just going to hit about 1/2 inch worth of my thread. And then bringing everything back, come in behind the bead, do a couple wraps, and then just pull tight. Now I'm going to come in with my razor blade, clip it off, and there you have Crystal Lite. Now I'm just going to come back in with the Velcro, wiggle, get those materials to pop. Probably can't hear it, but that Velcro is just pulling the fibers out. Super easy pattern, super productive pattern, looks amazing in the water. And that's it. Hope that helps you out.